Britain is an island, surrounded by a cold and unforgiving sea. For centuries it protected us from attack. But to prosper and thrive, we would need to do more than just hide behind her saltwater shield. Britain needed brave men, willing to venture out into the unknown, and she needed good boats to take them there. I've spent my life at sea. Now I'm going to take passage on 6 boats that together tell the story of modern Britain. Built for exploration, war, fishing, industry, and our very survival. These are the boats that built Britain and changed the way we live forever. This time I'm sailing on a square rigger. This one form of rig did more to shape the world we live in today than anything else afloat. Carrying goods all over the globe, the square rigger was the workhorse of the Industrial Revolution and the ship that turned Britain into the richest country in the world.
This is the Phoenix. She's got 2 masts, which makes her a brig. And to see her come over the horizon, thundering down on you on a windy day with a bone in her teeth and her topsails bellying out to the wind, is one of the great thrills this world has to offer.
It's been said that the wooden square-rigged sailing ship was the most important vehicle ever devised by man. These were the vessels that took sailors to the 4 corners of the earth and made Britain the world's first industrial superpower. At the beginning of the 19th century, with the Royal Navy policing the high seas after the Battle of Trafalgar, the world opened up for ships like these. Now, merchants were free to trade around the globe without fear of attack. And it was the square-rigged ship, with its forest of shrouds, stays and spars, that became the vessel of choice. Pushed by the trade winds that circle the world, these ships could travel huge distances, sailing non-stop for weeks at a time and handling everything that the oceans could throw at them along the way.
Vessels like this made fortunes for their owners in the mid-19th century. But to understand where they've come from, we have to understand that trading on the water goes back to the days before the dawn of history.
As an island, Britain has always depended on trade with the outside world for things we can't produce ourselves.
Long before the Romans came over here and stirred things up a bit, the Celtic tribes living in the south coast harbours and creeks used to trade with their opposite numbers over in Brittany.
Back then, trade was simple and restricted to a few luxury goods. Maybe wine from the Rhone, or olives from Provence. It's a simple equation, trading one thing for another. But as boats got bigger and the world grew smaller, the complexity and the scale of sea trade began to grow. And with the expansion of the British Empire at the beginning of the 19th century, Britain was exploiting business opportunities all over the world. Here at the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, the very fabric of the building testifies to the vast wealth this period was generating. And on the museum walls, pictures capture the world the square-rigged ships created. One painting in particular depicts a scene that must have been repeated thousands of times at docks up and down the country in the 1800s. Henry O'Neill's The Parting Cheer.
Wow. It's alive, isn't it? It really gives you the feeling that the world is expanding. These people are going out looking for new horizons. It's, I guess, boom time for the British Empire.
Absolutely. You're talking about the mass movement of people and goods, but also ideas and cargoes, all moving around the British Empire. And for that, you need a step change in the size of the ships as well.
Mm-hmm.
As this shipping company atlas proudly shows, by the middle of the 19th century, Britain either controlled or was trading with virtually every country on earth, and it was the square rigger that tied it all together.
So until really quite late in the 19th century, it's square riggers that are continuing to carry the bulk of Britain's trade, especially the high bulk, low value goods like coal and cotton. And this is still an age of high adventure on the high seas for Britain's sailors.
So how did these square rig merchant ships come about? Britain had been trading with the Far East and the Americas since the beginning of the 17th century. But with the European powers almost continually in conflict, and pirates lurking behind every other headland, the sea was a dangerous place in those days. Merchant ships looked more like men of war, weighed down with the guns and troops they needed for protection. But as the oceans became safer following Trafalgar, merchants were finally free to trade without fear of constant attack. Now, speed, sailing ability and cargo capacity were more important than firepower alone. Relieved of the need to carry a serious battery of artillery, merchant ships could become leaner, faster, more manoeuvrable craft. Time was becoming money, and shipbuilders looked to new designs. The efficient brig and her big sister, the full-rigged three-master, now developed rapidly. And as the focus switched from war to wealth, these rigs drove sharper, speedier hulls. They would soon become the backbone of the greatest merchant fleet the world had ever seen. Fortunes were there to be won, and it wasn't just foreign goods, Eastern spices and silks, that were making money. Every corner of Britain was getting into trade, exploiting whatever was at hand in the pursuit of profit. And one place captures this new attitude perfectly, and it's here, in deepest Cornwall.
You don't expect to see slag heaps and open cast pits like this in Cornwall, do you? But they're a mute witness to the Cornish people's urge to get rich quick over the past 150 years.
These vast mines once produced tens of thousands of tons of clay. The particularly fine clay demanded by makers of bone china, the must-have domestic item for any fashionable 19th century household. The only problem was that British manufacturers were based up in the Midlands. With land transport ineffective and prohibitively expensive, only the sea offered a viable means of conveyance, and the mine owners stopped at nothing to get their cargo ships as close to the clay as they could.
This is Charlestown Harbour, carved out of the solid rock of the hillside, an impressive feat of engineering, in a place where nature never intended there to be a harbour at all. But it was all in the day's work to the industrialists and ship owners of the mid-19th century, the sort of thing they would do at the drop of a hat in the pursuit of profit.
And that profit was made by the ships that could now come and go, laden in the case of Charlestown with the clay mined just inland. Throughout the 19th century, this little dock would have been packed with all the boat-related businesses you need to keep a fleet of trading vessels afloat. Most of that has long gone now, of course, but here at Charlestown you can still get a flavour of what it must have been like when square riggers were the shuttles of the loom of industry. Today they're replacing the mast on one of these great ships, and it shows the first thing you need if you're going to build a square rigger: wood. Lots of it. Francis Brown is a skipper and shipwright who has spent his life working on square riggers. He knows every inch of what goes into making one of these wonderful craft.
This is the inside planking. It's known as the ceiling. This planking runs all the way fore and aft in the vessel.
Yeah.
And it adds terrific longitudinal strength to the vessel. You can see the thickness of the planking here. This is a good 3 inches thick.
Wow.
It's very solid. Yeah. And the frames behind, and then of course the external skin of planking,
yeah,
which is another, on this vessel, another 3.5, 4 inches. So there's a massive amount of timber in these vessels.
It's unimaginably strong, isn't it?
Very, very strong.
And we got metalwork here, haven't we?
Yeah, this is well, it's actually ironwork. These are forged iron hanging knees. And they run right down inside.
And that's
the hull.
continuing here up under
Yeah,
the deck beam.
yeah. And this beefs up these deck beams and ties it all together. It's all very much a living component, and it's, you know, the way it's being constructed. It all works together, and it all does move a little bit at sea. Nothing is so rigid that it can't actually just move a little and give a little bit as it makes its way through the seas.
And every one of these planks had to be handmade and fitted by a team of craftsmen. Today, another of the Charlestown fleet is in dry dock having new planks fitted to her hull, which gives us a chance for a close-up view of the work that goes into building and maintaining these boats. First of all, the gap left by the plank to be replaced is measured, and a template is transferred onto the new plank so it can be cut to the right size. They then have to make sure that the bevel of the plank is correct so that it fits perfectly. Now, the boys are drilling the plank so it won't split when they fasten it in with giant nails. Before the plank can be offered up into place, the edges are greased with tallow to help it slide in more easily. Of course, they're hoping that their measurements are right so that when they insert the plank, it fits perfectly. Good job, lads. Now, it's hold the forward end up with a jack and hammer it home, leaving the aft end over length so they can cut the exact fit after she's been half secured. Once they're happy, they can start fastening by driving 6-inch nails through the plank and into the frames. To finish off, the nails are countersunk to really make sure they're not going anywhere.
It's great to see these guys whacking away with these big hammers, the explosive force that they're using to drive in these great big spikes, and every single one of those bangs is putting strength into the ship. The strength in a wooden boat is remarkable, and this is the way they've been built since time immemorial. These are ancient skills.
With 19th century Britain crying out for ever more ships to meet demand, vessels like these were being built in their hundreds up and down the country. And it was happening in some unlikely places. It wasn't just fully fledged shipyards that were carrying out this work. Boats were being built anywhere they could find the materials and the labour.
I've just brought you in here while the lads are sledging in the plank under the ship out there to make a point. We're in a full-on shipyard here, great big shed, all sorts of things going on around us, substantial establishment. Wasn't always like that. And in fact, in the 19th century, a lot of ships were built in an extremely vernacular sort of environment. There's a picture here of a schooner being built literally under a cliff in a Cornish village. You can see the size of the chaps here. This is a substantial vessel. What really impresses me about her is this beautiful, beautiful shear line and the sweet shape of her stern. That is an extraordinarily beautiful vessel. Her masts are rigged and ready to go. They've done the whole thing, these guys. There, these villagers on the beach. No shipyard, no nothing. Just a bunch of guys who could do it. And this was happening all over Britain.